You deserve to know what we thought of Disclosure Day. Let's talk about it.
Hello everyone, welcome back. We are back, the Eye of the Storm podcast. So today we're going to be discussing or debating Disclosure Day. But before we get into that, you already know what time it is. Movie recommendation time. I didn't have much time to watch anything this weekend. However, I did manage to get in a couple of episodes of series that I've been watching. I was waiting for From to kind of I'm currently on I think it's season 4. I think I'm on season 4 and then season 5 is going to be the last one. Or either it's season 5 and then season 6 is going to be the last one. But I think it's season 4. Correct me if I'm wrong. But yeah, so currently on the latest season of From. And if you guys don't know what it's about, bunch of people ended up in a town and they can't get out of that town. Whenever they do try and get out of that town, they just go in circles and there's a mystery. And obviously the mystery is how the hell did they get in there? And there's monsters in this town and they're trying to figure out what the monsters are, what the monsters want with them. And yeah, they're just trying to get out of the town and just figure out how to do so. This has been going on for 4 seasons. I can't lie, it's great. However, it does get a bit draggy because you just want to know what the mystery is. So then by the end of season 3, Lord have mercy. We're still nowhere close to figuring out what the hell's going on. That being said, it's kind of like Lost in a way, if you guys seen Lost, where the mystery does kind of get a bit long, but you're just engulfed in stories and you're kind of engulfed in trying to find out what the hell's going on. So you're just invested is the right word. It's pretty much the same thing, but invested in the storyline itself and the mystery. So that's what's kind of keeping me going. And obviously, with the first episode, I just finished watching the first episode of season 4 and it's good. It's really, really good. I enjoy it. So it kind of makes you forget about how long, it's taken to reveal what the actual mystery is. I'm kind of excited because I think the next season is going to be the last season. So obviously we're not going to know the full mystery yet. However, I am looking forward to learning more about what the hell is going on. Yeah, because after the first episode, it was really interesting. So yeah, so I'll definitely tell you. So yeah, you guys definitely should watch From if you haven't started.
So I've never seen an episode of From, and somehow I still hate the show because every time somebody talks about it and everything I hear about it just sounds like the most obvious scam ever in terms
It kind of
of
does feel like that.
being in terms of being a mystery mongering mystery box show that will just string you along for years and years. And is it a season every year?
Yeah, but to be fair, so that's why I say kind of give Lost vibes. However, because they did
Lost was
announce
bad.
but they did announce. But when I say Lost vibes, I mean in terms of the pending mystery of how long it actually took for them to actually reveal what the hell's going on, and obviously it amounted to something crap. But so hopefully this doesn't happen with From. But however, I do understand why you feel that way because at first it did feel like it, but now I don't feel that way because they did announce that season 5 was going to be the last season. So I'm like, okay, so there is going to be a resolution after all, and it's coming soon. So that's why it appeased me to an extent. But that being said, I think everything in between that, besides the mystery itself, I think the story is good. So the storylines and what happened, I think that is good. Huh?
No, it's not. Those are the worst. I generally skip past all of that until we get to the point where we're discussing the mystery again and trying to figure out what's going on, because all the melodrama, all the character stuff, anytime 2 characters are in a room talking to each other, it's like nails on a chalkboard. Honestly, it's just grating. It's terrible. I can't listen.
Okay, so that's Hervé's opinion, and I'll agree with some characters, especially the character between, I forgot his name, I forgot his name, so I'm not even going to try and remember. But there are some characters where the storylines is a bit draggy and boring. It's mainly between a wife and a husband. She's got 2 kids, right? They've got 2 kids, and it's they're kind of the main characters. For me, they're boring. However, other characters in there, for me, their storyline is entertaining to watch, and I do find it entertaining. That's what's is helping me continue on watching, as well as wanting to know what the mystery is. So Boyd is great for me. Boyd is great.
Yeah, sorry. Boyd might be the only redeemable character in there. Everyone else, I genuinely wouldn't bat an eyelid if they died. I genuinely would feel nothing. They tried to make a moment with his assistant in the last. I don't know if you're caught up to the latest episode.
I waited specifically to watch it in bulk, so please do not tell me.
All I'll say is they tried to make you feel emotion, and I felt absolutely nothing.
Wait, so it hasn't finished yet?
I think there's maybe 1 or 2. I think there's an episode today. And the worst thing is I'm saying all this, I'll be tuned into the episode. I'll be like literally directly on Monday, I'll be watching the next episode. Because like Daniel said, I've been sold the scam. So I'm like hooked into it.
Well, not really though. There's one more season. So let's give it a chance. Let's just wait. So there's one more season after this. And that's the last season.
Now we've pivoted from scam to abusive relationship. I'm gonna take them back, and this time it's gonna be different. They've changed.
I know what I'm dealing with now. This is the acceptance. I know what I'm dealing with. I'm going to see it out to the end.
I don't want to make this entire episode about From, but here's my question. If the reveal is nonsense and it's just no good, is it still a good story? Is the journey there good enough, even if you never get a resolution?
For me, real quick, I would say because obviously I enjoy more in comparison to Hervé, everything in between. So that's why for me, I would say it's still worth it, and that compensates for that. However, I would still be disappointed because it was a mixture of draggy characters in terms of their storylines and just like dull performances. So it's like, I'd remember those moments, but I had to go through this just so it amounted to this. And that would kind of piss me off. But at the same time, I'll kind of wheel it back in and be like, well, remember when, season 1 first, I won't forget when season 1 first happened, the first episode. I remember I saw the trailer and I want to watch the first episode. I was like, yo, this, because I was looking for something like something as significant as Walking Dead. So when I found this, I was like, okay, we're back.
All right, Hervé, what's the best thing you saw last week?
To be fair, I've not been locked into anything, not even any series, to be fair. And we can't discuss the latest episode of Farm. But I mean, the World Cup is happening at the moment. So literally anytime I'm actually like going to watch something, the World Cup is typically on. So yeah, I mean, I'm kind of upset that I'm not over there. Obviously, everything in America is like super expensive. Really brought capitalism to football.
Well, just in defense, like I'm not a football guy at all, but like isn't attending the World Cup always expensive?
Not as expensive as what the Americans are doing.
Yeah,
they're taking it to a brand new level.
But is that just because like America is just expensive, or is
that's what people? That's what they're trying to use to justify how much they're charging.
I saw somewhere where the metro to one of the stadiums is normally like $13, and I think they jacked the price up to like $150 or something stupid like that.
When you listen to like obviously just people talking to media, that's what, especially I've been hearing TalkSport and like I watch ESPN FC, they're just trying to, I don't know if matching is the right word, but they're just pretty much doing is the norm for them.
So we're just waiting for 4 years time when it's back in Europe, so we can go. But the vibes do look great, like, and that's like one thing about the World Cup is you just kind of see like the fan zones, you see like the fans mixing from different countries, you see like the South Koreans with the Mexicans in Mexico and stuff like that. Everyone's just having a great time. So I definitely need to attend the next one. Yeah, get myself out there.
And we do have American co-workers, and we've been making fun of them for not being ready for European football fans. Where we explain to them how European cities turn into war zones whenever there's a football match on, with like police escort. Like the fans will arrive in the city by train and will be escorted to the stadium by riot police, and then escorted back to the train station when it's over. Like that's how football games are in Europe, right? And we try to explain this to our dear American colleagues, and I don't think they believed us.
To be fair, the World Cup is actually more peaceful typically than your club games. But okay. Yeah, I mean, there's probably some countries where there's like political issues which might require.
But it's not political. It's just people showing up for a fight.
Typically, that's like more clubs. Like international games are a little more family friendly.
Okay. All right. Let's talk about movies again. So it's once again the time of the year where I recommend the newest season of Bob's Burgers. So season 16 just finished a few weeks ago, and it's just like firing at full cylinders. If you like the show at all, or if you're curious about it, season 16 is as good as the show has ever been. There's a whole bunch of really strong episodes. Like they're not all complete slam dunks, but there's no outright stinkers in there, and some of them are really quite good. And it's kind of remarkable how a show can be in its 16th season and its premise has not won out, and they still find ways to tell new stories that are within the normal kind of like story area, that like they're kind of in the same general place that episodes for that show are in, but they're not just repeating themselves, and they keep finding new stuff, which I think makes it fairly unique among animated shows. Like all the other long-running animated sitcoms, I think just run out of steam after like 10 or 15 seasons, and a lot of the time kind of just becomes self-referential. And Bob's Burgers is just doing its thing. It does like sitcom plots. It does plots that makes use of the children being at the center. Like there's an episode called The Skids in the Hall, in which there's like one of the Belcher children uncovers a corruption scandal in the hall monitors in the high school or in the middle school, I think they're in. And it just takes itself completely seriously, and it's high drama, but it's about somebody bribing hall monitors with candy so that they can run in the halls, like as a dare. It's the dumbest plot, but it takes itself so seriously that it just works. And then another favorite of mine was the episode "Heist Things Are Heist," in which the burger restaurant that the family runs gets an award, and it turns out to be a scam where you have to buy the award after they give it to you. And so the children decide to steal the award for their parents. And it turns into a whole thing. That's just 2 episodes out of 16. And it works. The characters are strong as they've ever been. The plots are well written. It's not repetitive. It's not self-referential. And aside from just being a good show, I'm just surprised that after 16 seasons, they've not run out of things to write about. And I think that's cool. And that's why it's my recommendation for the week.
Yeah, with these kind of shows, even with Simpsons, it's like, how long has that been going on? It's like
37 seasons.
Yeah, damn. So I'm sure it must be new writers. Of course, yeah, it has to be new.
I don't think so. I think the head writers are the same since 2011.
Seriously, does it feel current? Does like the subject matters discussed in there does it feel current?
Not especially. It's kind of like the town is kind of this backwater coastal town that is just a little bit quaint and a little bit 80s. There are plots in there, like they have modern technology and all of that, right? So it's in the modern day, but it's all a little bit quaint. It's all a little bit backwater. And that kind of gives it a very distinct character in terms of what happens in this town. For instance, one of the things that happens in the town is that there's an amusement park, and there's a whole carny subculture that are based around people who work there. And one of the episodes is about a blood feud among the carnies. And the children kind of find themselves in the crossfire of that, and they end up staging a fake funeral for one of the carnies in order to kind of flush out the old grievances among them. And it's like, that's not realistic at all. Like, that doesn't make any sense whatsoever. But this far in, they've done enough stuff surrounding the wharf that it just makes sense, right? So it's got its kind of its own character, and it's not like very topical at all. I think that's why it's so watchable. If you watch like an episode from 2 seasons ago, it's not dated because they're not trying to chase whatever was in the news 2 years ago. They're kind of just doing their own thing, and it's informed by what happens in the world, but it's not topical at all. All right, shall we move on to the main review?
Yep. So Disclosure Day, Danny G, please do your thing.
So Disclosure Day is a science fiction thriller film about a shadowy organization that has been in control of knowledge and technology surrounding the visitation of aliens. And when one of their employees goes rogue in order to become a whistleblower, a chase ensues where he and somebody who has been receiving visions from these aliens come in the crosshairs of that organization, and they try to evade capture for long enough to leak this information in a way that will inform the world of what has been happening with aliens and UFOs since the 40s, which is known as Disclosure Day. And the story then unfolds from there. So what did we think of Disclosure Day?
While watching this movie, I just couldn't shake off the nostalgic feel while experiencing it. It just felt like, like the early 2010, that whole era between 2010 2020. It just kind of felt like watching it then, like those type of big blockbuster films. The instrumentals, the way that they were performing. The storyline itself was, I think it was pretty simple. It was. I felt like it was a storyline that wanted you to make you question a bunch of things, because clearly it was, highlighting the threat of systems and critiquing it in a way. In terms of if this was, Steven Spielberg's personal opinions, I would like to know. But yeah, so overall, I would say I liked the film for the feeling more so the storyline itself. The storyline was cool, wasn't nothing special. The performances was amazing. That I forgot her name, but obviously she was in Quiet Place. She's been in many other movies, but she can act her ass off. Like every movie I've seen her in. Sorry, what's her name?
Emily Blunt, playing Margaret Fairchild.
Yeah, she can act her ass off. Like every movie I've seen from her, she's a really, really good actress. But so good performances. Love the nostalgic feel. The aesthetic of it was great. Even liked the ending sequence. A couple sequences that I liked. Overall, I'll say it was a good experience just for the nostalgic feel, but the story itself was pretty basic. Overall, I'll say I liked my experience due to the fact it felt like watching a movie back in the day.
For me, actually, firstly, I actually messed up. I actually missed the opening heist part, mainly because I got my cinema booking so wrong. I booked for the previous day and turned up on a Friday with my ticket and my popcorn in hand, etc., trying to scan it, and it was just getting so many error messages to a point that I was like late for the viewing. But this movie, it felt like a streaming movie. I went into it wanting to like it, but I was just kind of confused for most of the movie as to like what it was doing, what it wanted to be, what it was trying to do. I think in parts I wanted it to take itself a little bit more seriously than it did. So many stupid moments in this movie. Like, it's unbelievable how many, like, you could like do this 100 times better, or you could have like sat there and thought about it for about like 10 more minutes and thought that doesn't work, and come up with a better scenario than sort of what you did. I never really felt like any of like the tension or like the excitement or anything like it. Like, anytime that they tried to like introduce any of those elements, I just looked at it like, this is just stupid. Honestly, like it was just whatever. I think the thing that kept me like intrigued in the movie was just wanting to know kind of what was going on between Margaret and the other guy, and kind of like where their journey was kind of taking them, and like sort of what this kind of newfound sort of ability or awakening kind of meant for them. I think that was like the main draw for me, but just kind of everything else surrounding that, apart from the acting, like I will agree with Jonathan, the acting was great, but apart from that, it just kind of felt a bit amateurish and quite dull for large parts of it as well. There wasn't enough in there for me to be kind of having a good time with this movie, is what I'd say, which is a shame, because I was actually somewhat excited for this one, but yeah, just kind of left feeling a little bit meh.
So a year and a half ago, Gladiator 2 convinced me that I could make a better movie than Ridley Scott. And yesterday, when I saw this movie, I was convinced I could make a better movie than Steven Spielberg. Now, let me walk that back a little bit, because obviously, like, I'm exaggerating. But what basically works about this movie is just it looks nice. And it's well paced, like you're not bored when you watch it. But everything else is really, really phoned in. See, I think the action is nothing special. It's very generic. The characters are very flat. Every time they interact, they talk like robots. Like, they have this really weird cadence and this really weird way of talking that sounds like somebody who wrote a script, like a first-time screenwriter, wrote a really like technical script and had actors say them, and nobody involved knew how to make that sound like something a real human being would actually say. It's pretty incredible. Like, there are scenes that are supposed to be very emotional, where characters are essentially opening up to another character, and it's supposed to be a very human, very touching moment. And it's kind of just a dry exposition thing where people talk like, I don't even know, like as if written by engineers kind of thing. Like, there's no humanity in large chunks of it at all. In addition to that, the movie is 2 hours 20. About an hour 50 of that is basically chases. And half an hour is kind of the big finale where the big reveal happens. It's not a spoiler to say that in the end, the existence of aliens is made public. And that is like the big finale sequence that takes up 20 to 30 minutes at the end. And that's just the dumbest, most cliche thing I've seen in a long time. And I saw Masters of the Universe 2 weeks ago. And it sounds to me like this is once again a case where a really good filmmaker who has made good movies, really good movies in the past. This is the guy who made Jurassic Park and Schindler's List and E.T. and a whole bunch of stuff, right? Like, listing Spielberg's filmography is like, there's no real point. Like, everybody knows these movies, everybody knows how amazing they are. I do not understand how you can have decades of experience and not recognize how weak the story in this is, and how it basically amounts to a pile of nothing. Like, it ends up making the most cliched point, which we'll talk about. The moral of the story at the end is like the most tried. It's like a parody. It, like, if I had to satirize this, I wouldn't know how, because it's that cliche. It doesn't work on a lore level. Like, if you are into UFOs, there's nothing interesting going on here. It doesn't work on an action level because it's too generic and too rote. And it doesn't work on a human level because everybody is kind of reading a technical manual. Let's talk about it.
It feels like the script was written like 10, I don't want to say 20 years, but it just feels like it was written maybe even 20 years ago. And like I said, I did like that nostalgic feel that I received.
I'm totally on board with like an old school movie, right? Like something that feels like out of the 90s or 2000s. Especially if we're talking about like a techno thriller or like a conspiracy movie or something like that. I'm totally on board with like a throwback in that way, but it has to be good. It has to make sense, and it has to be entertaining. It has to amount to something, and that it just doesn't. That's the problem. But yeah, it does feel like an old school movie. Like Spielberg has since the 80s been making movies about UFOs, right? And it feels like he didn't miss a beat. Like he just kept doing what he's been doing since the 80s, 90s.
And it did feel there was some sort of mystery. But that's why I said it was simple, because it wasn't like a mystery. It was pretty much what you saw in the trailer. It was, okay, a bunch of aliens landed. And it just felt like it was a film about the mistreatment of aliens. Yeah. But to you guys, I know, however, you said you didn't, you're pretty, I think you said you didn't really know like what was going on. So you're just trying to like find out the, like pretty much the purpose of the aliens, I'm assuming. Is that what you said?
I think I was just waiting for more, to be honest. I
Okay.
like the whole time I was like waiting for it to amount to more, or for like more to be happening. And actually, to be fair, when you kind of see Margaret kind of realize her abilities, and like she kind of gets into like this awakened state or whatever. Those sequences were like super interesting when she's like reading the teleprompter, when she's just like speaking fluent Russian, etc. Like all of that was just like really good. And you're like, okay, so like you want to know the mystery, and then obviously they tease the element of like her childhood trauma and like what happened there, and etc. And that's going to kind of like play a part later. I was just kind of like waiting for it to get interesting and for it to like do more with what the story was. But by the end of it, it was just they stole this thing. They both have like powers and whatever like that. And then by the end of it, they just disclose that there's aliens. And even that whole segment at the end was driving me crazy. I was like, this is way too self-indulged in terms of like how they think people would react to aliens actually being real, and like how everyone was like glued to the TV and stuff like that. In reality, in today's day and age, anyways, I think it'd just be like 101 memes flying on online. It felt like it wanted to make like a poignant point with the ending, just like the feeling and like the emotion that people should feel. And the whole time I was like, this you're dragging this too long. And like I just hated how self-indulgent it was being in that moment.
That's, I think, the thing, that this entirely works on an emotional level, but that emotional level is very shallow and doesn't go anywhere, right? So what this is all about is, if we just listen to each other and have some empathy, then all conflict will go away, right? That's what Spielberg is saying here, right? Like the entire plot is predicated on this idea, right? So Margaret's power is empathy. So she can feel what other people are feeling, and that in every instance allows her to find the perfect solution to every problem, right? It starts with her getting a ticket because she's speeding. Because she can get into the head of the cop, she can get away without a ticket, right? And it goes all the way up to the end where she starts translating for the aliens. Their message is just listen, fade to black. It's the most tried thing. And that ties into this whole conflict where apparently we're on the brink of World War III, and it kind of happens in the background. But if you pay attention to any of the details, it's the most tried and found in thing. And again, it's this thing which I absolutely hate in Hollywood movies, which is this idea that all conflict is down to people just being stupid and ignorant. And if we just listened and talked to each other, we would all get along. It's the most ivory tower, out of touch, ignorant, privileged thing you can possibly say. For a movie like this to once again go to that way, it's not the only movie that does this. Most movies do this. It's an idea you see throughout the culture over and over again, and it's just stupid and it's just nonsense. But that's essentially what this movie is. It has very little to do with aliens or with the actual idea of disclosure. It has very little to do with just anything its plot is about. Like the entire thing is just a vehicle to promote the idea of let's talk to each other and get along. And I don't know, is that interesting?
Not in the slightest, especially when it's not really. You're not going to resolve your issues by being empathetic and like understanding other people. Like people have like what they want. People have like their own selfish desires, and whether you listen to them or you listen to their problems, whatever like that, it's not going to change it. If that's kind of a cynical way to view it, but
it is like, I don't want to get too political and too real world in this, but go to anybody whose country has been invaded and tell them, hey, just talk to your invaders. It's gonna be fine. Like, can you be more insulting? It is in fact an immoral stance that this movie is taking, because it's essentially victim blaming.
I didn't actually see it like that. But actually, when you say victim blaming, it really is, because like you're the person that's getting like wrong done on them, but you just have to like listen and hear them out and like understand where it's coming from, so that you can then de-escalate the problem that you didn't cause. Basically, I don't know.
It's not meant this way, right? Obviously. But this is the perspective of somebody who has no real problems and who can just sit on the sidelines and say, look at these stupid people for fighting, right? It's the most ignorant, uncaring, callous thing. Like, it just pisses me off every time I see it. And it's not just in movies, it's everywhere. And it just annoys me whenever it happens. And for a big movie like this to just lean into that so hard, it genuinely upsets me, because it pollutes the culture in that way.
I'm trying to match the dots, right, when it comes to your point about was it victim blaming?
Like, the movie doesn't actively blame any victims, right? But like this idea of, if you are fighting, like, you can put an end to the fighting just by sitting down and talking to each other. Well, that doesn't work if you're being attacked. And you can say, well, then it's aimed at the attacker. But I have seen this in the real world, where people get blamed for fighting back against aggression because any amount of fighting is bad. And if you fight back, you prolong the fighting, and that is unethical. And you can only have that kind of attitude if you are not being attacked and if you know you will never be attacked. Like if you know you are safe, you can sit on the sidelines and just moralize at everybody for not living up to your standards. But for a movie that talks about listening and empathy, that shows a callous lack of empathy towards people who are in real conflicts, right? And like the movie doesn't have to reflect my politics in order to be good, right? Like this could be a very well-made movie, and I just happen to disagree with what it's saying. But I do think movies like this and big movies like this, like everybody's paying attention to this because it's Spielberg. And I think this movie should be judged for what it's saying and what impact it could have on the real world or what it tries to do in the real world. And that does not look good.
Do you think that they're looking at it from a lens of, I feel like when they kind of like, or when they always introduce this like element of like World War III, is that they look at it as like the superpowers basically, and like how these like superpower countries don't really need to be in this conflict, and if they just kind of like talked it out and whatever, it would try to like de-escalate and resolve the issue. But in reality, a lot of the countries, and again, we kind of don't want to make this too like political or whatever, but a lot of like the real victims of this are typically like the smaller countries that have like less defenses, that have like less military resources, etc. So it's all fun and games, kind of like portraying it from the lens of you two big superpowers, like, you know, why can't you just coexist? Why can't you just get along? And why can't you just like do whatever? But then on the like in the real world, they're just kind of like going in and bullying some of these smaller countries at times, or they have like political political objectives or sort of agendas that they're sort of trying to achieve, or strategies that they're trying to achieve for the country, and such are just in the way of that, and it doesn't matter. And again, I think that's why I hear of like the victim blaming, but maybe it's like a slight defense where on Steven Spielberg's point of view, he's kind of seeing it as, you know, the bigger players in this as opposed to just kind of like all conflicts.
I don't think there's enough detail in this to tell what conflict he's thinking of. I don't think he's thought it through at all. I think it's just a general vibe of the world would be a better place if we just listen to each other. I don't think anybody thought beyond that idea. And like you can really kick the tires here and like go through like recent conflicts and say, okay, in these cases, it is just a large country bullying a small country, and in this case, it's a one neighbor invading the next one, or whatever it might be, right? Like it's like you could really go into the weeds on this. My point is just that the movie didn't even do that. The movie basically just has this idea that comes from being safe and knowing you will never have to defend yourself against aggression. That just doesn't make it moral at all. That doesn't make it useful, and it doesn't make it virtuous. I'm just annoyed when movies become self-righteous like this, where they basically just preach something that has no real world application, that doesn't help anybody, and that actually would make the world worse if people listen to them, because it would, like, a world in which nobody fights back is a world in which the aggressors always win. Like, that's just how it is. And I don't want to make this entire review about this, right? Like, if you want to hear about that, listen to our Wicked review, where we talk about racism for an hour, or our conflict review, where we talk about religion for an hour. I don't want to turn this into that. But because that moral is the entire point of the movie, I do think it's worth asking, is it a good moral? Like, and is it useful to anybody, and does it make anybody's life better? Does it make the world better? And I'm saying no, it doesn't.
If you're kind of like taking it away from wars between countries, etc., and if you're kind of looking at it more on the day-to-day and like your interactions with people and having a little bit of empathy of, and kind of taking it away from some stuff that happened in this movie, but, you know, someone was like serving you and they like were a little bit more rude than they typically were, or like, you know, they were like a little bit more someone like reacted like differently than they normally would. And I think, you know, having a level of understanding of like, oh, maybe there's something in their life that's like causing them a little bit of stress, and like having a little bit of empathy for that, and just like understanding that everyone's like kind of like dealing with stuff, and sometimes people don't react, you know, the right way to it for that particular reason. I don't think that's like the worst message in the world, but like having like the backdrop of like the war kind of like muddles the kind of message as well. And, you know, when you don't have like a solid thing that you're saying at the end of the movie, it kind of confuses like what you're meant to take away from it. But I think if you kind of look at it on like a smaller scale, there's some relevancy in there.
Yeah, sure. Like if it's on the level of, hey, let's have some empathy for each other in daily life, then that's fine, of course. Like that's a fine message, but it's also so broad and so universal that it's kind of useless. It's kind of my thing. My point in all of this is it's just not a useful thing. It doesn't enrich anybody's life. It doesn't help anybody. It doesn't make anybody's life better. And that makes it less than useless, in my opinion. Also, the story is not predicated on the idea of empathy. It's not like the characters actually are more empathetic than they have been in the past, or learn to be more empathetic, or learn the importance of empathy throughout the plot. And that means they are better people in the end than they were in the beginning, or something like that. Doesn't really happen. When Margaret uses her empathy powers, it's to control other people and to manipulate them and kind of mind control them, right? She's not, like, she's kind of a supervillain in this. And we only root for her because she's designated as the hero. It's not like she actually uses her empathy powers for good and she can lead by example, is the thing. It's just, I'm deeply unimpressed by the moral of the story and how it's communicated and how it's fleshed out in the story. And in my opinion, a movie, if it has a moral, should demonstrate its virtues throughout its plot by having the characters, at least at some point in the movie, usually by learning to do this, learning the importance of those values or those virtues, becoming better people, and then showing us why it's good through their actions in the plot. And that does not happen in this movie. They basically they just basically just run from the bad guys and use empathy as a mind control weapon in a bunch of times in the story. And I don't think this movie deserves any credit for having a good message. It's just what I'm saying. All right, moving on from that. What about the plot itself, right? Like, it just seemed to me like it's incredibly rushed, incredibly surface level, and has massive holes in it, right? So one thing that really stood out to me was that throughout the movie, is it Coleman? I think he runs kind of the defector camp, right? And throughout the movie, he's he's contacting either Margaret or Daniel and kind of gives them, like, helps them and gives them information and kind of guides them towards kind of the solution. And we see him kind of in a place what looks like a movie set is being built, right? And when I first saw this, like, it happens throughout the movie, and then it becomes pivotally important in Act 3. And when I first saw this happening, I was actually kind of into this because it was like the most obvious foreshadowing you have ever seen. But they were kind of like teasing that this would be important later, and it doesn't make sense what they're doing, but you're kind of under the impression that it will mean something and it will be important later on, right? And then what it turns out is that when Margaret was abducted as a child and the aliens gave her empathy powers, that happened in her bedroom, like in her home as a 10-year-old. And she has repressed that event as a traumatic memory, and they're trying to have her relive that memory in order to kind of unlock her, the full scale of her powers, right? I've got a question. Did they know about Margaret and her powers before that event where, as she's announcing the weather, she's channeling this message from the aliens? Did they know about her?
You could say because they had that really old alien that they wheeled out at the end, and maybe they got, actually, to be fair, they couldn't translate. They couldn't understand the alien language.
That was the whole thing, right? That Margaret is the only one who can understand that dialect.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, that part is a bit confusing because I think even the whole, I don't know what operation there was, but obviously they involved the government. They didn't know about Margaret. No, he did know about Margaret because he said there was two of you. I think that was obviously the line that he kept on repeating. So I'm trying to figure out who he knew about first, because I think he knew about one of them first, and I think I'm not too sure who though.
Well, he worked with Daniel, right? Daniel was the defector, and he was working with Coleman the entire time. And then Margaret starts getting visions that kind of lead her to cross paths with Daniel, and then they kind of team up, right? And I was under the impression that neither organization knew who Margaret was until she spoke the alien language on live TV. But at that point, the house was already being built.
Yeah. But why was he so surprised that Daniel understood what Margaret was talking about?
Because the information that he can understand the alien language is new.
Okay.
Maybe I'm misremembering, but I was sure that Margaret came out of nowhere for everybody, and they kind of had to respond to that.
I don't know, because they were building a house already. They're building her house already. So
yes, exactly. Which is, like, if I'm right, that's a plot hole.
But that would be a very big plot hole. I don't think.
For what the movie was doing, I wouldn't be that surprised if they just kind of like overlooked that aspect of it. Yeah. And it was a plot hole, because there's just like so many elements of this movie where things just kind of happen and it doesn't make sense, and there's no real explanation for some stuff.
But it seems like you guys are kind of like bypassing the fact that he said there's two of you.
When does he say it?
He says that many times. He says there's two of you. There's always been two of you. He says that, I think he says that probably like 3 times. I think one time he said it on the phone to Daniel when Daniel was understood what Margaret was saying. Another time was when they were together in Emily's house. And then there was one other time as well, I think it was before that. They made a big deal out of him saying there's always been two of you.
Okay. But then why don't they talk to Margaret?
Who's they?
like the defectors. Like if she has been the second person the entire time and they've known about her, why is she on her own? Why has she not been recruited like years ago?
Once they remember when she went viral for the language that she was speaking, and then one of the assistant of the main guy that's the head of the organization, she showed him obviously that she was speaking the alien language, and then that's when they put up her pretty much her background info on the screen. So they didn't know about her, but the guy did, the black guy, the one that was building the house.
But that doesn't make any sense at all. They either know or don't. And he didn't tell anybody. He didn't say, hey, this is other person, let's go. And she's going to be a target. And she's going to, start manifesting this ability at some point. And it's mission critical for us that she developed this ability. Let's go talk to her so to make sure she's on our side. But it doesn't happen. It might well be misremembering a detail. But whichever way you slice it, it doesn't make sense. Because if I am Coleman and I know that there's two key people that are necessary for disclosure, and one of them already works for me and the other person doesn't know who she is, I'm gonna send some operatives and recruit her. And at minimum, put her under protection in case Wardex figures this out first and starts going after her. I don't think it makes any sense whatsoever, whichever way it goes. And maybe this is really obvious if you happen to remember that one line that explains it all. I was just sitting there confused, and it doesn't seem like it adds up. Whichever way you slice it, like there's a gap somewhere. Characters don't act in accordance with what they know and what they care about. It's just what I'm saying.
No, he already knew that Daniel was a second. Like, he kind of set him up in the sense of, you're going to steal the information. And he was like, no, but like Daniel was meant to hand it off to someone else. But in I think it's Coleman's plan, or like whatever his name is. But in his plan, the information was always going to stay with him because he kind of knew that he had something a little bit more about him. He always knew that he was like somewhat, or like had like the alien powers.
Then why would he say that there's always been two of you? Because I swear to you guys, I don't think you guys are gonna rewatch the film, but if you check on Google, Google will confirm, or even AI will confirm what I'm saying, that he even says there's always been two of you, and that's been made out as
he says it at some point. The question is just, when does he say it?
Towards the latter part of the movie, to be fair.
I think it was once he realized that Daniel could understand what Margaret was saying, but I'm gonna double check on AI. But yeah, I think it was at that point or around that point.
Either way, I think we're gonna go back and forth on this for ages, but either way, there was like massive logical like flaws within this movie. Like, the villain in this movie has like this device which he can hold on to, and if he looks at your picture long enough, he can kind of like transport into your mind and like kind of see where you are and this, that, and the other, and like be in the same space that you're at. And there's a point in the movie where he realizes that there's these like group of de factos, or people that have like kind of like betrayed the organization and like created like this like rebel group, and they have all the pictures of the people that didn't show up for work or something like that. They try to explain it off like, these are the people that didn't show up for work for like, on this particular day. So if you were looking for this particular guy, or if you like wanted to know where this guy was, why would you not use a device to kind of like either look into like his mind like he did towards the latter part of the movie, or to any of the other people that were in and around him, so that you would know the location of where people were? But it was just like, I don't know, he kind of like used it quite conveniently, even to a point where they lost the artifact or the MacGuffin in this particular movie, where they captured Daniel and then they didn't have the MacGuffin, and he didn't think to check he didn't think to go back into the mind of the only other person that Daniel was with at that time. And I don't know, like, this whole, maybe it's to do with like her stabbing her hand and like breaking the connection or something like that, and him not being able to go back in there. I don't know. It's not really like well explained in the movie.
What it seems to be is that the pain kind of disrupts the connection. But then my question is, how does she know? She just does it, right? She just starts stabbing her palm with the crucifix. And that's fine, but like there's no scene where she figures this out, that she has she can disrupt the control by inducing pain. Like, she doesn't do it by accident and then realizes, oh, this is how I can fight back.
It just seems like he has full control over her up until the point where the movie doesn't need him to have full control over her, and she's able to stab her hand. Like, up until that point, he's very much the driver of her in the movie.
Yeah, it's very much the kind of thing that where you have, like, where we can really wreck a plot if you don't think the capabilities through, and the entire plot has to be built around what this technology can do, right? And it doesn't seem like it. It seems to me like they wanted like the scene of Jane being taken over, and it gives the characters a reason for hiding, right? And for kind of obfuscating where they are. And every time they slip up,
dumbest slip up ever as well. that they're both sleeping. They take the precaution to tie her up, but he doesn't think he has the note or that he written on with the name of the hotel. I saw that and I was like, you cannot be serious. I was like, I'm not buying what you're trying to sell in that particular scene, because you can't be that stupid and that careless to have any type of hint as to where the location was, just laying there in her reach. That pissed me off so much.
Yeah, so in general, there's like a problem with things not being thought through and things relying on coincidence a lot, right? And I think if you are in a complex conspiracy thriller, the details really have to add up. It has to be thought through. It has to all make sense, at least in a way where just casual, like on a casual watch, you're not immediately picking up on major holes and major contradictions, or where characters just do outrageously stupid things. Like this thing in the motel where Daniel is writing some notes on like stationery from the motel. And so when Noah takes control of Jane, he sees through her eyes the address of the motel, right? Like that's such a plot device. It's incredible. Like I could not believe that an actual movie was doing this. Like if like a first-time director who has never done anything uses that as a crutch to drive the plot forward, I can kind of see what happened there, right? But for a real movie made by professionals to have to rely on plot devices like that, it's kind of embarrassing.
Even down to the whole where they're like hiding in that farmhouse and Daniel's like coming back to the house, like that's swarming with agents. He's in the most open field and no one can apparently see him. It's not even like there's like a fence with like bushes which you can hide behind. The fence barely has anything on it. It's see-through. You can just see this guy like running and none of the agents look around. Like these are the most incompetent agents as well, because there's just like many examples of this through the movie, and he's just able to just get in a car and drive into the house and like crash multiple. Honestly, like if you kind of talk about if you talk about this action enough, there's just like stupid stuff happening all over it.
And I understand that he doesn't want to abandon Jane, but at the same time, he's walking towards like 30 armed agents. I was yelling at the screen in my head when that happened, because it's like, at least come up with something where he's conflicted and he realizes he should run away, but he can't leave Jane behind. But at the same time, Jane is a danger because she's being controlled. Like he's been told 5 seconds ago what is happening, right? Margaret just tells him that Jane is compromised and he still goes to rescue her, right? Like it's very hard to care about like a character when they do such obviously stupid stuff and the only reason they make it through is because the script says they do, right? Like I didn't feel like that victory was earned at all. It just felt very and then, you know, like a series of events that individually look kind of neat, I guess, most of the time, although not even all of them. But it was a very, very frustrating experience to watch in large chunks, because whenever they were doing something like that.
How did you guys feel about the cliffhanger?
Like the ending?
Yeah, it did kind of end on the cliffhanger,
I guess. I mean, like the whole thing about just listen to each other is the point of the story. Like I did find it very frustrating that we didn't actually see the fallout of the disclosure. Because like this idea of disclosure is essentially the government has been hiding, like this is a real world thing, right? Where UFO, like people who believe in UFOs are essentially anticipating this day where somebody will leak all of this information and then the entire world will know what they know. And then the world will be changed forever, right? First of all, people's reactions to this information was just bizarre in a lot of cases. And then the movie doesn't show us any consequence, right? So, for instance, when Jane, just off the top of her head, has this existential religious crisis of how, no, we cannot tell people that aliens exist because they will think they're gods, comes out of nowhere. She has not shown that kind of opinion. Like, she doesn't even act that religious, aside from having been a nun for a few years earlier. And even then, her living in that monastery sounds to me like she was kind of lost and was looking for purpose. And she tried the monastery and didn't work out for her. Outside of that, up until that point, she doesn't seem to be very, very religious. But then she has this borderline fundamentalist reaction to aliens existing.
Well, I'll be honest with you. The reason why I was a bit more understandable to her reaction was because that is kind of how a lot of people who aren't really that religious would still react to certain things. Like, for example, someone that's not really religious, but if someone disrespects their God in a religion that they grew up on, they would still get offended. I've seen many instances where people still get offended by that and they will actually do something to that person. So we do see a lot of people who you wouldn't even know are religious. They still have that attachment to religion. And yeah, it does trigger a response. So that's why for me, when I saw that, I do get what you're saying. But for me, I said, okay, that's what would actually happen with some people.
But if it's important to the character that she has this perspective, then maybe establish at some point that religion is that important to her.
But that's the thing though. I'm saying because it was
Like
established.
from a screen, like, yes, I understand that some people have this buried deep inside them, right? They were raised religious, and so even if they now reject that religion, they might still feel protective of it, or still find something wrong with that, or like come to the defense of that religion. So like that might absolutely happen, and in the real world, that might come seemingly out of nowhere. But in a movie script, you have to establish important character traits before they become important, so that when they become important, it makes sense because the movie has to tell us what kind of person this is.
But I think that character trait was given based on her upbringing, and obviously them introducing that she was about to become a nun.
Right, but that's what I said. Like she tried to become a nun, realized it wasn't a good fit, and then she left, and she never talked about it again.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. I do understand what you're saying, but I just think
I'm just saying it's poor screenwriting to have a character trait come out of nowhere like this. Like you have to establish it in some way, even if it's subtle and you don't realize it until the rewatch. But I don't think it's there. I think it genuinely comes out of nowhere and it disappears very quickly again, right? I think it's only really there in that one scene, and she doesn't even like she's actively upset about it, right? And this leap to people will think aliens are gods is just nonsense. Like I don't care how religious you are, it doesn't make any sense because they're just people that happen to be from another planet.
Yeah, no, I don't agree with that opinion either. That I did find that to be a bit like, oh, whatever.
Yeah, and then they do it again when Margaret is with the defector faction, right? And she starts reading people's minds, and one of them makes the like crossing sign, right? And essentially says, "You are my god now." And then Margaret actually doesn't say that, but that's kind of the implication. And then Margaret says, "I will be nobody's religion," which comes completely out of nowhere. Again, it's just the one line. It doesn't even follow from anything that came before, I don't think. Who would see that and go to like it's she's being treated like a messiah, right? By this one person.
But wasn't that foreshadowed already though? By what's her name? Daniel's girlfriend.
Well, she says that people will do this.
Yeah.
But this is about Margaret's reaction to "I will not be anybody's religion." Like that reaction comes out of nowhere. And I think.
Sorry, just quickly, but Margaret always did have a rejection to her abilities. So in a way, sorry, cats are fighting. Apologies. But yeah, Margaret did have, or she was already rejecting her ability. So that does kind of fall in line with that outburst of her saying, "I want to be no one's religion."
No, I was just gonna kind of ask like that whole like angle of like her kind of almost being seen as a messiah. It didn't really feel like it went anywhere. Like it kind of seemed like it was introduced in that particular moment. And I don't recall it kind of really coming up again or like mattering or like there being any level of conflict outside of like that one moment, unless I missed something.
It comes out of nowhere. It's there for one line and then disappears again. And I think just like as an idea, it's fine. Like you could build something out of this. My contention is just that the movie doesn't. It just scatters these lines into the movie and then doesn't set them up. It doesn't pay them off. It doesn't develop them. It doesn't anchor them in what happens in the story. It's just a thing that popped into whoever the screenwriter was. It just popped into their head is my problem. And I think that's bad writing.
And to be fair, like yes, like you can have like someone that like just reacts, because I don't think it was everyone. I think it was just like that one woman. So you can like be like, oh, like maybe like one person might have that reaction, you know, and see as like as a god, while like everyone else is just like amazed by her or whatever. But I don't know, like I just feel like, you know, when you're making a movie and you introduce something like so like significant like that, I just think it has to matter and it has to like have a little more meaning than it did.
Another plot hole that really I found frustrating is where are the alien governments? Where apparently for 70 years, their people have been crashing on Earth and the craft have been stolen and their pilots have been tortured, interrogated, killed, and dissected, right? And so where are the governments? Why are they not in orbit saying we will flatten a city until you give us our pilots back?
They were too busy trying to understand human empathy and
I guess so.
That was what they symbolized. We just said empathy, so
they represent like a more evolved life form. And this is something that's in UFO lore, right? Like if you look at like UFO abductee accounts from like going back like to the 50s or 40s or whenever they started, a recurring theme in those stories is that abductees will tell us the aliens are watching us and they're concerned about how we're wrecking the planet. Could be the ozone layer, could be World War III, could be nuclear war, could be pandemics, could be whatever, right? Like whatever the big issue of the day is, the aliens are concerned about it and they're more evolved and more advanced than us and they want us to figure it out, but they will not contact us until we figure it out. And this is kind of going to that well of the aliens are a more evolved, more empathetic civilization, who are being kind of abused by the savage humans, right? Who are violent and ignorant and small-minded and greedy and all of that, right? And if we only became more like them, then we would be better and all our problems would go away, right? So that is, I think that is the idea that's here. And you're right that this is not supposed to make logical sense. This is supposed to make thematic sense, where the aliens are the victims of our barbarity, right? Like we are just so cruel and so stupid and so primitive that we cannot help but mistreat these aliens we don't even know why they're here, right? In a lot of alien stories, they're actually here for sinister reasons, but they might just be tourists, right? Or they might just be explorers. Like every time they crash, which apparently happens all the time, we just capture them and torture them and study them and take their stuff, right? Like that's what this is saying. But from a logical plot level, are they, like, once this has happened a few times, why do the aliens keep hiding from us? Why do they either not try to get their people back, or why do they not go into orbit and broadcast their existence and say, we will not leave until you give us our people back, right? Like, because, like, imagine if, like, Americans or Europeans or something, like pilots crashed somewhere in the Amazon, right? And like a hunter-gatherer tribe kind of just abducted the pilots and took their stuff. We would send in people to get the bodies back, right? If our people were being abducted, we would get them back. And then why don't the aliens do the same thing? Things like this make it harder to buy into the story. And if you're not bought into the story, it's harder to care, right? And the movie is all about caring. Like a movie has to make you care. And if there's major story holes in there, like theme only carries you so far. What you're seeing on screen still has to make sense. It's kind of what I'm saying. And related to that, are the aliens even the good guys? Because they abduct children and experiment on them and groom them to be their tools, right? Margaret and Daniel did not consent to being experimented on and being modified. They did something to their brains to give them these abilities, and they might end up being for a good cause or to a good end, but they abducted children and made them undergo medical procedures against anybody's will, essentially forcing them as adults to serve some kind of purpose. That is not what the good guys do. So I'm just saying, like, if like clearly the movie intends for the aliens to be the good guys and to be more enlightened and more empathetic and more civilized and more spiritual than us, right? But then they act still in ways that are consistent with the UFO lore, which kind of treats aliens like a hegemonic force that treats us like animals, right? By abducting us and experimenting on us and so on, right? So does any of this make sense is kind of just my question. And what does it all add up? And I don't think any of this is meant to be the implication of what's happening, but because the plot is not thought through and the plot is not being made to work, big questions and holes and implications kind of just hang in the room. At this point, I'm not rooting for the aliens, right? Because they're clearly doing stuff to children. That kind of ends up well in the end. But like in the meantime, this is not okay. Like, am I taking this too seriously, or is this like a genuine flaw in the movie?
I think the latter part, when you were talking about like the aliens coming down, like logically, yes, it makes sense. But I think that might be taking it too far and too seriously on
Why?
that one. Just because I don't think that was like the idea of like Disclosure Day is like, you know, bringing secrets out to light. So then having like an alien mothership like hanging over the planet, like threatening to, you know, blow up a city, it kind of like defeats the like Disclosure Day like angle that they were trying to go with. So like I think on that front, I can forgive them for not doing it, or I'll give him the benefit of the doubt that the aliens come many years after.
Here's my rewrite. The aliens have given us a 10-year ultimatum, and that was 9 years ago. And if we don't figure our stuff out, when the clock is up, they will start fixing us because they're done with our nonsense. And so we have to disclose, and so we have to overcome our baser natures, and we have to evolve, and we have to do it now. Otherwise, bad things will happen, because we've made an enemy that we cannot defeat by treating the alien pilots in this way. That fixes the problem. That explains why the aliens are still hiding. That explains what they're doing. And that creates a ticking clock in which humans have to figure their stuff out and overcome their self-made problems.
I quite like the element of, should people know? Like, if aliens actually existed, should people know? Without the looming threat or whatever, just what is in the public's interest? Like, what's in the public interest? If the government had access to all of this, would the public be able to handle it? Like, how different would life be? And I think a lot of these are questions that the movie didn't answer.
I was going to say, it would be nice if somebody made a movie about that.
Yeah. like what happens after, you know, we discover that there's aliens, and like, how does that change the world? How does that sort of impact people? Like you said, like, and they introduced like elements of like, would people like go to worshiping the aliens? Would people like start to like panic and like, you know, start going crazy? Would like people like turn to anarchism or whatever? But like the movie just doesn't explore any of that whatsoever. And I think that just would have been a little bit more of an interesting debate, as opposed to we should all listen to each other.
Yeah. maybe do the disclosure at the 50% mark. Instead of having a 2-hour chase scene, have the disclosure happen at the midway point, and then the second half is about the fallout. I don't know. Seems like a more interesting story.
Yeah.
Then people can actually have different perspectives on what does this mean and what do we do now. And does that actually make all our problems obsolete and all our conflicts kind of quaint? Or does it actually not change that much?
Yeah, because then you have like, were the good guys right all along, or were the bad guys right in wanting to, you're just kind of told whose side you should be on, really. But some people can see it from the government side as like, you don't want this information out there. You don't want to like upset the balance of power, and you'd like imagine like letting people know that there's like all this alien technology. Like if you thought that there was a World War III already going on in this place. Now imagine saying that, America has alien technology that they've been sort of understanding and getting to sort of use. How do the rest of the superpowers like Russia, China, etc. respond to that, etc. is a real question.
Stargate did this. Like in for like 4 or 5 seasons in, they disclosed the existence of the Stargate to the other major nations, and they are pissed off that the US has been making galactic enemies without consulting France and China and Russia and so on. There are real diplomatic consequences to this. It's a great storyline. I wish something like that had been in this. Like, America is in a way speaking for all of humanity by doing this, right? More or less, right? We don't really see anything about UFO crashes in other places. I think every example we see is in the US, if I remember correctly. Maybe 1 or 2 are somewhere else, but ultimately the US government, we don't see other organizations having a say in this, right? It's not like there's no Chinese war decks or Russian war decks or French war decks. You know what I mean? Like, again, it's one of those Hollywood things where only America exists. It makes a certain amount of sense that it's an American movie for an American audience, but if you're talking about humanity and then the rest of humanity doesn't exist in the story, it's a little bit iffy. One last question I had about this was, did this movie make you curious about UFOs? Because it references real world UFO lore, right, in a bunch of places. Like, most of the stuff in the info dump or in the leaked documents is real stories that people really believe happened, right? Like Nixon showing a UFO to this actor, right? Like, that is something that is supposed to have happened. So this is drawing from real world lore, essentially. And Steven Spielberg is famously a believer in UFOs, and he's been making movies about this for decades. Did he succeed in bringing attention to this topic? Did it make you interested in UFOs as a topic?
I forgot about this movie as soon as I left. Like, I left the movie, discussed it a little bit, and up until like understanding that we needed to do this again, and I had to think about the movie, I genuinely forgot about this movie. And like, this literally made zero impact on me or my interest in UFOs. I kind of compare it to the Michael movie that we watched earlier this year, where I watched that and I think I was like in a Michael trance for about like two or 3 weeks, where like I was just seeing Michael Jackson everywhere and was just listening to his music all over again and rediscovering him. This, I very quickly moved on from this. This was a whole bunch of nothing for me.
Yeah, as flawed as Michael is as a movie, it really makes you feel good about being a Michael Jackson fan, right? Like, I'm not a fan at all and not a music guy at all, but I kind of swayed in my chair a little bit whenever the music happened, right? And I think that's like one of the movie's objectives, and it achieved that. And here, like, I don't know that this movie tried to popularize the topic, but if you are already there, why not, right? If you think that this is an important topic, and if you think there really is something being hidden from us, wouldn't you want to use this movie as a vehicle, not necessarily to bring the information out there, but to make people kind of interested in the topic so that they then go out to do their own research? It seems to me like you would. I think that's what I would do if I was a film director and I was making a movie about a topic that I'm passionate about and that I think is being ignored and that people don't give the time of day. Like, that would be one of my goals, I think. Spielberg seems to be completely uninterested in making UFOs cool. I don't know. It's weird.
I mean, it's an alien movie with very little aliens in it.
Yeah. But like, it could be like this looming presence in the background, right? Like, you get like little glimpses of it, and it's like a wondrous and awe-inspiring thing, like that's life-changing and whatever. Like you could do this. Like, a skilled filmmaker could absolutely convey this idea without showing all that much. Like, I actually think it's too much to see an alien up close in the end. It kind of takes the mystery and the awe away from this idea just to have like that being up close. Maybe that's the point, that it's just a person, but at the same time, the movie wants you to think that this is something spiritual. So I don't know.
Yeah, well, I will admit that alien kind of came out of nowhere. I wasn't expecting that. I don't think that was necessary.
And they didn't seem to have a plan, right? Like what's the point? Like, why even be there? Like, it's not even on camera, I don't think. Or if it is, then it kind of just sits there. But I think it just gives Margaret the message. And then Margaret is on camera saying, I have a message for you. And it's listen, full stop, end of movie. Like, how lame is that? I don't know. I think it is.
I think we should probably head off to last thoughts. Yeah, for me, I feel like I still have the same feelings I have towards this movie. It was more so the nostalgic feel, why I liked my experience. Storyline was, like I said, simple. I don't really have much to say on this one besides my rating, which would be I think it will be a 5.5, borderline 6 out of 10. I think I'm going to give it a 5.5 out of 10.
This was unfortunately a bit of a waste of time, I will say. And at 2 hours 20 as well. Like, it just felt long watching it. Too many issues with this movie and not enough entertainment value out of it, in my opinion. So I'll give it a 4 out of 10.
Yeah, I think this is a massively wasted opportunity. It's a pretty poorly made movie, aside from a whole bunch of camera shots looking kind of nice. It's not a well crafted story. It ends up amounting to very little. It doesn't make good use of its topic at all. It doesn't shine light on anything important. It doesn't have anything good to say in terms of its moral or its broader point or its message. It's just a big waste of space, in my opinion. So that's a 5 out of 9.
All right, guys, thank you very much for tuning into today's episode.
If you reach this part of the episode, as always, we appreciate you working with us, press and play, and just giving us a general listen. And as always, if you liked what you heard today and you enjoyed our discussion, you should probably tell a friend. And if you hated everything and you thought we were chatting a whole bunch of nonsense, you should probably tell an enemy. We are the Eye of the Storm podcast.
All right, guys, we'll catch you next time. Au revoir.
Ciao.
Bye bye.